Okay.
Welcome, zombies, suicidal people, and people prolonging their life to episode 467 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 15th of November 2022 and featuring Torchwood, A Day in the Death, written by Joseph Lidster and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper, Bern Gorman as Owen Harper, Naoko Mori as Toshiko Sato, Gareth David-Lloyd as Yanto Jones, and Freema Agyeman as Martha Jones. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and unlike Owen, I do need to breathe to get through a cast list that long. With me are co-host Randy Ronson McCulloch.
You know, I listened to that opening and Matt chose the wrong Batman theme.
And Alex Fireheart.
Hello.
The wrong one in what way?
Oh, he chose a mix of the Danny Elfman theme, when really Kevin Conroy's Bat was known with Shirley Walker.
I thought it was always a variation on that, but
Um, only for the first season of the animated series.
Oh,
Once it
okay. So we
switched
went
up,
with the
they
season
switched
one,
up.
basically.
Yeah, but all
Gotcha.
further seasons and every time Batman would show up in something, it will always stung the Shirley Walker scene.
And I guess I skipped mentioning this, but Mad Matt Winchell is at work because whoever makes a schedule does not pay attention to standing schedule requests. Not sure if we'll see him in November.
Hmm.
Mm.
I know he definitely said this week and next week definitely won't be here, but I forget if he knows beyond that.
Yeah. So I've got my
And my
coffee,
my
juice, and
attendance is
water
up in the
ready.
air as well, as I may be
Mm-hmm.
once again homeless and adrift on Tuesdays.
Hmm.
So how's everybody's week going, other than the future being up in the air?
It's annoying. Every problem that we seem to fix here springs up 2, 3 more.
Hmm.
I gotta face it, if my body was a car, it'd already been turned back in under the lemon law. Anyway, I'm not gonna go on about my stuff. How about you guys?
Gotcha.
Um.
I personally don't think I really have anything special worth mentioning. Um, yeah, I did meet for the first time with an advisee through a professional society I work for. So it's good to get some mentoring experience. Other than that, I think the most exciting thing I did this week was watching Black Panther, which we'll talk about later.
Hmm. Yeah, for me, it's basically just been. I've been trying to get my sleep while I'm off work because I took 2 weeks off work. Um, because I realized I'm probably not going to be allowed to take time off in December, January because
Mm-hmm.
Christmas break essentially. um, so I figured I'll take some time off before then. So I've rested my body a bit prior to that. Um, and most of it has been like watching the odd thing here and there, and then also just trying to slowly move my sleeping habits back around into something decent, which I only really managed pretty much by accident last night by virtue of falling asleep, waking up, oh shit, turning everything off, going to bed properly, and then I woke up at 3 a.m. and had to turn the aircon on to cool the room back down so I could sleep again. And now I'm currently just trying not to melt because it's God. I wouldn't even know what the difference is off the top of my head, but it is apparently like 32 degrees where I currently am, and the humidity is probably very high because
That's funny. It's 32 degrees here too, just on a different scale.
yeah. 'Cause, yeah, it's 32 Celsius, but apparently it feels like it's 37. And
Yeah.
and 40 Celsius is where, like, if kids are at school, they're allowed to go home.
Yeah, well,
So-
yeah, that's around, I think, 110 on the Fahrenheit scale.
Hmm.
104.
that's 104?
Yep.
Mm. But yeah, that gets to heat stroke levels.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It's one of those cases where I both wish the aircon in my bedroom wasn't so damn loud, so I could actually have it on while I sleep, and also that I had like aircon in where I'm sitting right now, which is a little lounge space, because there's not enough of a breeze. Opening any windows wouldn't help.
I was going to say that you live in a hotter climate, so I'm a little surprised that the schools wouldn't have central air, but then I remember central air is almost exclusively a US thing.
I mean, we have. I'll put it this way: when I was in high school, I think most classroom, like certain classrooms did, some didn't. So, and that was more of a matter of people being cheap, I think. Because it would be just a matter of there'd be windows lining the room. You know, there would be, I don't think I was ever in a classroom. If a classroom was designed with aircon in mind, there would usually either be no windows or the windows would all be like closed off anyway. Because it's like a computer room, so it's a bit darker, so they have the curtains shut and stuff.
Mhm.
When I went to high school, air conditioning was sporadic too. About the only place that had the air conditioning was the main gym and the library.
Yeah.
I think my experience was about the same, in the sense that the best air conditioning most classrooms had was somebody bringing in a super loud box fan that they tried to put somewhere between the door and the window.
Well, I remember, and I'm going to tell you this is kind of a gross story. My biology final at high school, I had 7th period biology in a room that not only did not have aircon, but was above the tar roof of the second gym. Part of what they had put out were partially dissected fetal pigs, and we were to identify the organs. Those had been in there since first period that day. It was 105 out.
Ugh.
So above 40 Celsius, since we were comparing.
Yep. I remember walking into that room and the smell hit me like a wall.
Ugh.
I turned to my biology teacher and I'm like, I'll take the fail. And I dashed for the nearest bathroom.
Yeah.
If I had it earlier in the day, I probably could have dealt with it, but
I mean,
not
Fair.
after.
That feels like the kind of heat where if it was out in the sun, it would have been cooked.
All right, so sounds like that's about it. Or sounds like not much going on in terms of banter. So I guess we can move on to tonight's show.
Yes, on tonight's show, we've got birthdays, news, a little bit of the
Bit of
rumor
a
mill we're
channel
going to
update.
break. Oh, you do have a channel update?
A short one.
Okay. Some geek talk, episode summary, our review, our final thoughts, and our rating. So let's get into it.
All right.
What is this channel update?
So YouTube has recently updated the way they handle things, and it seems that they basically went back to the way things worked properly 10 years ago. So yay for going backward, I guess. But for a while, the way our YouTube channel has worked, since we're not a large channel, is you had to go to YouTube and then search for an Unearthly podcast. Now we actually have a proper URL at youtube.com/@Unearthly podcast. So yay, you can type us into the bar without needing a bookmark or searching. Like I said, very short update, but worth mentioning.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now all YouTube channels can pick their URL, which again, 10 years ago that was the case. So I don't know why. I don't know.
I think the idea was
maybe they changed who made the decision.
I think it was a thing of maybe they took custom URLs away for newer channels when they
for smaller channels.
Yeah, for like they took it away from people who couldn't monetize, sort of a thing, maybe.
Basically, yeah.
And we've been demonetized how often? Like every podcast.
Well, we haven't gotten to enough views to be monetized yet. Although on that said, I have noticed in the past couple months our sub count did go from 72 to 75. So we're doing something right.
All right. Excuse me. So we only have a couple of birthdays. First one is the 10th with Neil Gaiman, a writer. You might have known him from his other works. But he wrote a couple of Doctor Who episodes in 2011 and 2013. He just turned 62. Next on the 12th, our own Alex Fireheart turned how old?
32, which means that I'm exactly 30 years. Well, 30 years and 2 days younger than Neil Gaiman.
And the 14th saw the birthday of Paul McGann, the Doctor from the 1996 movie, who made appearances again in 2013 and in 2022, the most recent special. He turned 63. So he's
becoming slightly more frequent. Maybe in 4 years he'll have another one.
Yeah, give him 10 years, he'll have his own series. So that moves us on to the regular news, of which there's only one main article. The Doctor Who, I believe it was Doctor Who magazine, confirmed a few people that will be working in production for both the specials and the new season. We know, of course, that David Tennant and Catherine Tate will be in the specials, and that the Kuti Gatwa will be coming in the regular series, as is the new companion. I forget who the actress' name is. Anyway, what we've learned is that the first special will be directed by Rachel Talalay, who longtime viewers will remember being a very decent director during the Capaldi era. And one that Chibnall didn't use, and we're like, why? The second special will be directed by newcomer Tom Kingsley. And the final special will be directed by Chanya Button, also a new. Kingsley is best known for directing two BBC sitcoms, Ghost, and the Channel 4 sitcom Stathlets Flats, neither of which I've heard of. Chanya Button uh, started in theater work. Her first feature film was Burn, Burn, Burn. She directed episodes of the Stars drama about Catherine of Aragon, Spanish Princess, as well as Acorn TV's The Whitstable Pearl. None of this is science fiction, but we'll see how they do. Starting in the full series, the first block of the series will be another new name new to Who, I should say, Dylan Holmes Williams. He had a short film, The Devil's Harmony, that won the jury prize at Sundance 2020.
Speaking of which, I think they started filming the first block for the new season last week or so.
Right, possible. Let's see. Other familiar names are attached to the show. Of course, Russell T. Davies as showrunner. Julie Gardner, Phil Collinson, and Jane Trantor are all going to be executive producers. Joel Collins will act as executive producer. Production designer will be Philip Sims. Sims was the supervising art director on the 6th and 7th Mission Impossible films, as well as Episode 9 of Star Wars, Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers Age of Ultron. And I mean, we're talking art director, so...
Yeah. So as much as we can fault the stories and some of those, the art was fine.
Yeah. The script editor will be Scott Hancock, who worked on Sarah Jane Adventures as well as many scripts for Big Finish. What interests me is we have no news yet on who the composer is going to be for the new series. Will they continue with the one from the Chibnall era, or will Russell T. manage to coax Murray Gold back into the role, or are they going to find somebody new altogether?
I guess, to be fair, the composer is the one job that if they wanted to wait another 9 months before picking, they could.
Yes, but we're all just dying to know.
Yes.
All right, so that's all the news we have. Even Big Finish was quiet this week. A bunch of stuff that's upcoming, like February of next year, but nothing released today. Moving on to breaking the rumor mill. The Sun, Cult Box, and the Radio Times all announced that Miriam Margolyes, a.k.a. Professor Sprout from Harry Potter, has been cast in the Doctor Who 60th anniversary special.
But they're all citing the Sun, so it's really just the Sun.
They're all citing the Sun. Yes. Now, the Sun source is only identified as a television insider. So that itself does not give me much faith in what the Sun is reporting. So take this one with a grain of salt, people.
Yep.
We might see her. We might not. But until we got somebody more definite than a television insider, don't expect don't expect anything from it.
Right.
I guess one of those things where like it's believable, but still better to wait.
Is it true? Yeah.
Yeah.
Although apparently she previously voiced Slitheen, so I'm not necessarily saying that means we have Slitheen coming back, but she does have a history with the franchise.
When did she voice Slitheen?
In the Sarah Jane Adventure story, The Gift.
Okay.
Oh.
Leaf Apple Glynslavine Blatherine. Okay. So it was a blatherine. All right. Anyway, this will take us up to Geek Talk. We've got 3 movies and 1 video game.
All current, surprisingly.
Yep. So Black Panther, I already mentioned earlier, so I'll go ahead and start talking about it here. The second movie came out this year, or this week, and I managed to catch it opening day, which is good because the next day there was a showing giving free tickets to undergrads, and I didn't want to be in a theater packed with 18-year-olds. So it was nice to go to the very small opening showing. So keeping in mind that I'm a person who prefers Thor 2 over Thor 1 and Iron Man 3 over Iron Man 1 or 2, I'm sure that's already making Ryan want to kick me in the dick. But keeping those in mind, I absolutely love this story. Black Panther 1 was a cultural phenomenon, but the story itself was kind of Marvel, Marvel bog standard. It was really the, everything else about that movie that was praiseworthy. Pretty much. I'm not saying the story was bad, but that the story itself did not stand out compared to Marvel fare. Black Panther 2 takes everything good from the first movie, kind of including Chadwick Boseman, but not to the full extent, of course. But it takes everything good culturally, artistically, musically, etc., and continues that while telling a story that is new to the MCU. It's basically a story about Shuri coming to terms with, Black Panther's death, with T'Challa's death, with her inability to prevent it. This is not spoilers. It literally happens in the first 5 seconds of the movie. And also introduces Namor, which is absolutely well done. Because of DC's Aquaman, they were forced to reimagine, instead of having Atlantis, they had to come up with something else. And I think what they came up with perfectly fits a Black Panther movie better than any traditional Atlantis could. And yeah, it stands out in terms of being, a uniquely emotional movie for Marvel. And it also hits everything you would expect from a Black Panther or Marvel movie. So, ringing endorsement from me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I will say it was funny because there was certain elements that probably I noticed a lot easier this time by virtue of having watched a video essay about Black Panther actually done by a black person. So I was like, oh yeah, all these things that probably would have gone over my head by being the whitest kid there was, this one's a lot more blatant about certain things than the first one was, where they had to kind of not that it was holding back too much, but this one's a bit more thingo with it, which was appreciated. I will say there's one plot thread in this movie that made this almost feel like a middle chapter movie. So it didn't feel like this was complete to me. And that, at least, I've only seen the movie once. That could change on a rewatch. But it just felt like a certain plot line was just kind of left dangling, and it felt like, was this intended to be here? Was this Feige being like, hey, we need to push this thing, so can you have this thing in here? Like, I don't know. It
Well,
was.
there's definitely foreshadowing for Thunderbolts in there, but I'm guessing that's not what you're talking about.
I mean, sort of it is, but also just like there's a thing that it feels like they're setting up to pay off.
They're setting up
somewhat.
They're setting up at
movie.
least 3 future properties.
Yeah, and it's like
like any Marvel show.
Yeah.
Which is funny because if you take this at face value, it feels removed from the story. It feels like a standalone because it's so focused on Shuri and Wakanda
yeah,
and Talokan. But it actually is immersed in the MCU. It's just it's kind of helping to show the shape of what Phase 4 MCU is. And people really, a lot of people don't see the shape of Phase 4 MCU.
I mean, it has been the most awkward phase so far, where it's like you're not really sure what we're building to.
Oh, actually, technically, it's the end of Phase 4, so I guess it's foreshadowing Phase 5. Phase 5, which is, I guess, a lot more pointed. I don't know.
A lot quicker, that's for sure, because it's only like a year and a bit, I think.
Yeah, as long as we don't get a global pandemic during Phase 5, yeah.
But yeah, like, it was a thing of, like, I enjoyed it, but by virtue of having things in my head from the video essay I watched, I was thinking more about certain elements and being like, well, hang on. This isn't going anywhere. Why is this here? This feels like this is going to be paid off in the movie. Like, I guess it felt like certain elements were going to be paid off to a point anyway in the movie. So the fact that they were just left dangling because it was just ultimately foreshadowing is like, this should have ended like half.
Are you able to say which plot line without spoiling, or is this something we should better talk about privately?
Probably something better to talk about privately.
Okay.
Because it's stuff that like is still going on in the movie by like almost the end. So technically, just a running plot thread throughout that's like, this feels like this should go somewhere, but it kind of doesn't. But yeah, like, again, I still really like the movie, but it's just this one thing was like, just made it feel very incomplete because my brain, I think it is really just because my brain didn't click that this was foreshadowing and thought, well, this is going to be paid off in this movie somehow. And then the movie ends and I'm like, wait, what? But yeah, otherwise, definitely a very good movie. I mean, like, it's no spoiler to say that, yes, of course, Namor survives this movie, because why the hell would you kill him off? So I'm interested to see where this Namor goes from here. Especially because
it seems like they're setting up a plot involving him in Black Panther 3 at the minimum. So,
you know what? It's not much of a spoiler because it comes up that like Kamala Khan is a mutant, right? In like the MCU. Yep. Okay. Yeah, the movies have now mentioned mutants because Namor specifically refers to himself as a mutant. That's like the closest to a spoiler I will drop. Like, we now have mutants named in the actual movies. So, there you go. Which is funny because he is the original mutant as far as, like, when you trace it back to
in
people
publication order. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Publication order.
But before we move on, one thing I don't want to forget to mention is they did make, the part of the cast that would be relevant for, they did learn a Mayan dialect. One that still survives, of course, because that's how they had to teach it. But, they needed somebody to teach it. But the actor who plays Namor did specifically mention in an interview that he had to learn a Mayan dialect for his role. And I'm assuming that the other members of his faction did as well. So So again, definitely a step over Moon Knight, which not surprising given that Wakandan is literally just the African language Kosa, which I don't quite have the enunciation ability to pronounce that word properly. But so they continue the Black Panther tradition of using real languages that would be, that would make sense in context. Now, did the next movie, did they use real ancient Egyptian?
Well, he's not ancient Egyptian. They made up. I don't know if maybe in the comics they made up a country, but in this specific case, which is funny because they even kind of say that this is a civilization that seemingly predates even Egypt. Like, there's a bit in the opening narration of like before the pyramids. So I guess the idea is it's supposed to be a pre-ancient Egypt even civilization that he's technically from. Kandak is the country that they come up with, which is seemingly on a list of ones, but I don't know. Okay. In the comics, he's been the ruler of it, is what I'm guessing, going by what I'm reading here. But this is The Rock playing Black Adam, so, we don't go there. Instead, he's a former slave from the 26 or 25? 2600 BCE. Who's just sort of, can't go in any further than that because it's kind of all over the place. They kind of reveal more as the movie goes on, but yeah. The one hope I had going into this movie was that The Rock would not be The Rock. Because, he just has that The Rock performance. And I'm like,
okay,
do not give me that. This is Black Adam. What I know of this character, which, to be fair, isn't that much. I haven't been exposed.
You're saying he shows more range than he would in a comedy movie, basically.
Yeah. He actually is playing the straight man for a change rather than being the one making quips and all that. It's the people around him making quips. Or if he's making humor, it's very dry humor, which is not something The Rock usually does. I was kind of figuring he might be able to pull it off. By virtue of the fact that I enjoyed him in the Jumanji movies that he's been in, because that was also him sort of playing against type by virtue of, while he's in this video game world, he is the archetypal, heroic strongman dude. He's got to portray the teenagers inhabiting the character. So he's got to do shit he normally wouldn't. You can't just be The Rock.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. You had a Discord issue?
I just want to say is he's not the only actor with that problem. Will Smith, for instance, plays the Fresh Prince, or he plays a block of wood.
Yeah. And in some cases it can work if you're typecasting to a role. But yeah, this was a thing of this was a role that The Rock was gunning for years. And I was just hoping against hope that it's will he actually do a good job? And I think he did. Now, did he give me Black Adam? I don't really have too much to compare it to because I don't read comics, and the main exposure I have to the character of Black Adam is Injustice 2, the video game. So, I think that makes him Egyptian.
Of Justice League Unlimited.
And
that's about it.
But yeah. I will say, I did like some of the. I also liked some of the characters that they did introduce in this. I think Pierce Brosnan did pretty well as Dr. Fate. Which he's in the trailer. So like there's some characters that I probably wouldn't mention because I don't think they're in trailers. So it probably is a spoiler or something. But definitely I know that Dr. Fate and Hawkman are in the trailers. And those I thought were good. I mean, I don't really know much about Hawkman, but what little I know is him being a stubborn asshole does seem to fit.
Although I think so.
Yeah. Of course, the funny thing is that I did not expect to see two movies 2 days in a row that both have black in the name and both have... This would have been really funny if I'd done a double feature of these, if I'd been able to. Because this would have almost been like watching Doctor Strange and then Everything Everywhere All at Once, where those were both multiverse movies. And these are both POC character as the main character, and there's a lot of either in... Well, I mean, like, you know, with Black Panther, the Wakanda is an unsoiled, like, has not been touched by colonizing assholes country, whereas the opposite is the case here, because Kahndaq has apparently only ever really had shitty, not so much colonialist rulers, so much as just they've always been...
From what you said, they narrowly avoided another similarity because Black... I guess it sounds like they avoided the God Emperor route with Black Adam.
Seemingly.
Scorpion King, yeah.
Yeah. Well, generally, the funny thing that also came to mind was they also avoided Doctor Doom as being, like, ruler of Latveria. Which, you know, maybe they'll go down that path eventually. I don't know. I feel like they only really had to make him an anti-hero in this, which they make very specifically clear. He butts heads with all the heroes that he runs into in this movie, specifically because he is willing to kill everyone. Well, kill all the bad guys anyway, whereas everyone else is like, no, don't do that. Even though the bad guys in this are, at least the people running the country are actually like people who invaded and took over in this instance. But the idea is they pretty much always had shitty leaders. They were like, seemingly when they had Black Adam in the past, they were fine. And then he got like sealed away or whatever, and came back in modern times, and in the in-between, you know, thousands of years, they've been fucked over
answers
constantly.
the question. That answers the question that I didn't ask because I figured it would be a spoiler to answer it. So,
well, it happens early enough in the movie that I feel like saying that he was sort of sealed away. Kind of, I just won't give the full context as to that, because giving proper context would be. Because this movie does a lot of, like, they give you one thing, and then later on, they're like, well, actually, here's more of the full picture as to why. And I'm going through a lot with that.
I haven't been timing us, but it's we probably should wrap up this one.
But yeah, honestly, I really enjoyed this one. It'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. Like Black Panther 2, there is also no post-credits in this. There is a mid, and then that's it. So post-stylized credits, but no post-normal credits, which was funny because, like, the guy who came in to clean up was like, are you waiting for post-credits? And I was like, yeah. No, there isn't one. Okay. So I walked out. But yeah, I would say this is worth seeing. Just obviously, you know, with everything going on still, or just generally, if you can't afford it, better to wait for streaming. But I am glad I got to see this on the big screen.
Maybe I'll see it next week since I have half a week off. All right. So next is Harry Potter as Weird Al.
Yes. During the brief spot that I was not in a hospital, I took a little time to sit at one of my favorite parks with some Taco Bell and watch Weird, the Al Yankovic story. The completely true and not at all fabricated story of Al Yankovic's life, growing up with abusive parents, um, to his near arrest while attending a polka party in high school, to recording his first uh, his first song in a public restroom, uh, to becoming the #1 parody artist of all time, to his love affair with Madonna, to his revenge-fueled rampage in Colombia to take down a drug lord, and to his eventual assassination in 1985. One of those things was true. So I'm not going to tell you which one. But yes, it is Daniel Radcliffe playing Weird Al, and the entire thing is so tongue-in-cheek that at first you're like, wait a minute, no, that's Harry Potter. And um, they even make a joke about that in the movie when when Radcliffe as Al is meeting Dr. Demento for the first time. He's like, "Yes, I want to advise you. You mean become my mentor? No, I want to be your D-mentor." I mean, that's just the kind of thing this is. I mean, it was done by the Funny or Die guys originally, and they decided to just go whole hog with it. Um, so it in itself is a parody work. If you're in the movie for something just completely off the wall, watch UHF. If you're looking for something slightly off the wall, watch this. It is.
Okay.
I mean, first of all, anytime Daniel Radcliffe has to sing, Weird Al actually dubs it in. I, obvious differences there,
Mm.
which I believe is itself poking fun at one of these biopics that they did.
Mm.
They just apparently had a great time with it, and it's just fun to see. Weird Al was a consultant and does play a role in the movie, just not as Weird Al.
Ah. That would explain why I saw Yankovic and Radcliffe doing interviews together.
Mm-hmm.
Although I didn't watch any.
Well, there's a few interesting stories there. Apparently, Radcliffe on set was referred to as Weird Al, so they'd say Weird Al to the set, please. Weird Al to the set, and that was for Radcliffe to show up. Well, when Weird Al was also on the set, they couldn't use that, so they started calling him Real Al. Real Al to the set, please. Now, you can imagine, after having been called Weird Al since around 1980,
Mm-hmm.
hearing somebody else being called that on the way to the set was quite disturbing. And having
Yeah.
the new moniker of Real Al.
What aging does to you. You have to give up your name to legacy characters.
Al also apparently coached Radcliffe on shooting the accordion scenes, with his major piece of advice being pump the bellows more. Yeah, it's just a fun movie. It's just, unbelievable. Apparently, Radcliffe himself is a rather large Weird Al fan,
Oh.
thanks to his American girlfriend, who
Yeah.
introduced Daniel Radcliffe to it. Um, so doing this, I mean, he was like, "Oh, come on, they could find somebody that looks more like Al than me." And then he read the script and went, "Oh, I see. It really doesn't matter."
Ah.
It's just a great fun piece of movie that's not taking itself seriously. So, yeah, like I said, watch it if you're in the mood for something lightly loopy. For the seriously loopy, go stick to UHF. And move on to your other review now.
Yep.
On to video games.
Yep. I like basically 2 days ago finally finished the main story of Pokemon Legends Arceus. After like
Did you just like cook through that?
no.
'Cause how long ago did you get that?
Couple of months, I think. It was definitely like, well, like it had probably been out for like 6 months before I got it, and then even then, it was probably like another month or two before I actually started playing it. And I basically have just been like, I think for the most part, I was mainly just playing it on stream. And then while I was trying to reset
Are those streams getting exported to YouTube?
No, because I can't. Mainly just at the moment, I'm too scatterbrained. I can't be bothered in some cases. I feel like eventually, I might like take some bits out of the final stretch. The fun, like the main.
I hate watching Twitch VODs.
Yeah,
so.
the main comedy you would really get is cringing at my terrible accents, because I gave the Diamond and Pearl clans American South accents because they keep going on about the almighty Sinnoh. So all I could do is like, oh come on, they're all Southern preachers. Like they keep going on about that, and it's like, yes, the Lord Sinnoh and whatever. So I was just like, okay, they're all from the American South, clearly. I gave the professor a sort of, I tried to go for David Attenborough, but I couldn't quite get it, so it's like in that realm, but whatever. And then because I hate myself, I gave the other, like, if I'd gone with the girl option, this is what I would have looked like sort of thing. That character, a Scottish accent, which I'm terrible at, so it was probably very funny to listen to. Unless you're from Scotland, in which case you probably wanted to shank me. But yeah.
I don't know. Let's give some of that to the critical drinker and see what he does.
And I think that was mainly because I was running out of accents. I'm like, shit, there's only certain ones I can do. But yeah, I enjoyed this game a lot. And it's one of those things of like, I'm glad that there are at least elements. I don't think it like wholesale is going to be the default for Scarlet Violet, which comes out later this week. But like they're taking elements of this to shove into that just to make it, because like it was generally nice because this wasn't just bog standard thingo, and like some of the story beats are kind of interesting, although it is still just funny to me that it's like, yeah, let's put the fate of the world on this 15-year-old who fell through a time portal into the future because God got bored. Because like it was just so funny, just like
because God's a dick.
Yeah.
Although if you finish the post game, you get at least a little more of God's motives.
He's still a dick.
I mean, what God isn't really? But yeah, like it's just so funny, like so
I
many.
remember I was in a call with some of my other friends who were playing Arceus at the time when I read through that opening, and I'm just like, Arceus is a dick.
uh, but yeah, and then again, you just have all these adults being like, "Well, I guess the only competent person here that can solve all our problems is the 15-year-old." Which I get, it's Pokemon games, so usually kids are like, you know, being sent out when they're 10 to go and do all this other stuff. But it's also just like, okay, in this specific instance, it's a bit weird that they're entrusting the fate of the world to some 15-year-old they've never met before who fell out of the sky. But like, okay. I will say it did bug the shit out of me that it took doing the 59th, I think, side quest to finally be able to be Ginger in the game. Like, are you fucking kidding me? I couldn't I couldn't give my character my natural hair color until I did a side quest late on.
I know
that is so weird.
There's there's a PokeTuber Patters who remarks on that a lot when playing Pokemon games with customization. I think Japanese people legitimately don't think about it. They think of it as just another hair dye color that people would only rarely ever use.
See, that's the funny thing, though. I'm pretty sure in Pokemon Sword Shield, I could be Ginger, or if it wasn't like Ginger, I just went with like red.
You were,
but
I mean, you're Scottish in that, right? So,
I mean, it's hard
just
to
saying.
tell with that. But yeah, anyway, it's like, it's just, but yeah, and of course, no one bats an eye at your friggin'. Oh, well, actually, no. Everyone kind of is like, what the hell is that? Because you have that friggin' Arceus phone. And shit. But yeah, like, it's interesting. I'll be interested in what we get in the next in this line of side games, because you wouldn't just call it Pokemon Legends and then Arceus is the subtitle if we're not going to get something else. If, like,
the lack
granted,
of a second Let's Go game begs to differ.
Or
the lack of a second Pokemon XD game.
I mean, like, to me, it was more like proof of concept. Like, well, let's give this a shot. If it fails, whatever. If it does well, cool, we'll do more. And because this did so well, I would be very shocked if there isn't another one. It might be a while. It might be one of those cases of, this is the one for the Switch. We're not doing one again until whatever the next console is. Or it might just be a matter of them going, well, we're going to take elements from this and put it in the main games now, and that's it. But, you know, I
think that's more than...
Yeah. But it would be nice to have something else like this, because it's nice to have a story that is literally just go out and catch Pokemon, and there's also this plot going on, but also it's not just gym, and also there's this evil organization doing some shit. It's like, you know, go out, which I guess is funny because Sword and Shield sort of did, but also the grunts that you ran into had nothing to do with that, which was weird. But yeah, for anyone else who hasn't picked it up yet or was like me and got to it late, I would say give it a shot if you have the money.
Or you're running late because the next game comes out in 2 days.
Well, right. I would say it's worth getting to, like, if you're not just skipping it for Scarlet Violet at this point, I would say play those first and then get this, like, later when it goes cheap, or like there's a sale, or something like that, which they might start doing around the time that Scarlet Violet is out proper, because, you know, now it'll be the old game as opposed to the current game. I guess technically it isn't the current game anyway, because they did remakes of Diamond Pearl as well.
That was before Legends.
Okay. But in any case, that was enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to the new games at the end of the week.
All right. So someone give me a countdown.
Just a sec. Okay, so you're ready then?
Yep.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. A Day in the Death starts with the cold open with Owen screaming underwater, presumably attempting to drown himself. We then cut to the episode's framing device, which is Owen talking to a lady on top of the building. The lady plans to jump off, and we're led to believe that Owen does too. And Owen starts to talk about, first he shows her that he's basically undead, and then starts to talk about how he got there. He's been frustrated because Jack basically takes him off duty until Martha can perform a bunch of tests on him and make sure, he's not being mind controlled or, some other bullshit going on or anything else that's a threat to the team. In the meantime, for a while, he's just, pulling Yanto's job as the coffee bitch. But then he gets tired of that and, he goes to go home. Tosh goes to hang out with him. But Owen ends up snapping and breaking his own finger just to show how fucked up everything is. This is after Martha had pointed out to him that, he's not healing in any way. So if he, gets cut or breaks a bone or bruised, it's going to stay that way. That scene leads to Owen running down the pier, jumping into the water, and showing us what we saw in the cold open. He comes out to Jack, who is basically like, gives him no sympathy and is just, how long is this going to go on? Kind of hypocritical if you think that Jack has probably done that plenty of times, when coming to terms with his own curse, but whatever. They then start to look into a potential mission. A guy who has basically been collecting alien artifacts. His home is putting out huge energy spikes, and they need to figure out what's going on. In order to get through the security, they send Owen because he doesn't get caught by heat detectors. So he basically goes in, kills the electricity, beats the shit out of the guy's guards, and goes up to the guy, finds out that the guy has basically been trying to, keep himself alive despite heart attacks, and has an alien artifact that he thinks is keeping him alive, but actually isn't. Owen basically, talks him through and makes the guy realize that, he's basically just keeping himself alive, but in a state that he might as well be dead. So the guy dies. Owen takes the artifact, and they all think it's going to explode. And Owen goes to sacrifice himself to absorb it. But actually, it's more of a message, and there's basically a big light show. And it's basically a response to the Earth having, sent out information to aliens, to potential aliens in the past. This brings us back to the framing device, where Owen reveals he's actually only up there because he saw the lady about to jump. So he actually came up to help and stop her from jumping. The end.
Okay.
Right.
You did that in 3 minutes, 32 seconds.
I was like, the end, and then pause. I was like, okay, did I lose connection?
I was just making sure that, because I'd muted my mic on OBS's end, was just making sure I had unmuted it on that. And also, I think I started a bit early, so I took a second off for that. But yeah, 3 minutes 32.
All right. We'll talk about what we liked about the episode. Alex?
Um, I get, arguably it's low hanging fruit, but I'm gonna go with the framing device specifically. Well, actually, no. To a point, that's more of a scene. So, but yeah, just the framing device in general of Owen talking to this woman on a roof about all of that is an interesting one that you can only really get away with the once, I think. So this was like an interesting one to do it with.
Okay. And
Yeah,
nothing
that
from
makes
Matt.
sense.
Bill?
Yeah. So what did I like about the episode? I guess I'm gonna go with that. Despite all the frustration Owen has, he finally, he at least comes to term that there's pros and cons. That there's ways he's able to, use his status, in ways that only that to do things that only he can, um, and that helps him kind of come to terms with it.
He still has a function.
Right.
I
But
guess
yeah,
I liked
Yep.
um the whole concept of what do you do when you're basically a zombie,
Mm.
but not a brain dead zombie, you know? I mean, that's what he is. He's dead, but he's not dead. He's dead, but he's
Right.
still moving.
He's Clara.
Let's not get there. He's basically, the undead. And, I mean, that there's that point where he's cleaning out his apartment because he couldn't do any of those things anymore. And it's just like, wow. What are you going to do? Just sit around and watch television? What did we dislike about the episode?
It's one of those things of like, it feels too easy, but you know what? Owen really is kind of the best and worst part of this whole thing. Just like, you really do expect that fucking Simple Plan song to start playing at some point. Because just some of the ways they do it, where he'll be just staring off into nothing. And like, sometimes it works, other times it feels like they're really overdoing it. And it's just like, like it comes back around at the end, sort of, but it's still just kind of like, God damn it. This could have been like, it just feels like it could have been handled better.
So are you saying specifically like the like zoning out sort of thing, or more than that?
Well, just like, I feel like they could have portrayed, I mean, like, it's one of those things where, like, I get what they're going for, but they're hammering it in a bit too hard. Like, to the point that it almost becomes parody in some moments. Where, like, sometimes, sometimes it's okay. Other times it almost feels like we're getting into, I should be starting to hear, how could this happen to me? Playing over it. And it's like...
Okay. Bill?
So what did I dislike? Um, I'm kind of gonna go with Jack on here. I mean, I kind of ended up alluding to it in the summary, but it's. I mean, I definitely get at times when he's being super pragmatic. He's like, we don't know. Is this we think this is actually Owen, but we don't know what's going on. All of these things that makes perfect sense. And then but otherwise, like, if anyone can relate even a little bit to what's going on with Owen, it's Jack. Like,
Yeah.
there's been other episodes that talked about like the issues. I mean, fuck. It's almost a trope as old as Doctor Who at this point, that immortality is a curse, not a blessing. So there could have been a conversation there, but instead he chose just to be an asshole about it. And I mean, on one hand, yes, it's easy to be an asshole to Owen because it's Owen, but it would have been nice to see some leadership from Jack.
Yeah.
And we did not see that.
Yeah, like, I don't think I noticed the first time watching this, like, a couple of years ago now. But the second time through, there not being a, hey, you don't think I tried doing that, like, a bunch of times, sort of thing, like, like. And the funny thing is like, even within this series, Jack's sort of done it when he sat in the car with that guy when he, killed himself with the fumes and shit. So it's like,
yep.
You would think that, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's just like, if this was handled a bit better, that would have been a scene. But this is sort of this, well, probably not the start of, but this is definitely one of those instances of Jack is an asshole in Torchwood. And is always much better in the main show.
Yeah, you really don't hit that till season 3, though. I mean, where they hit you over the head with it. So me, I don't know. I find the physics behind Owen's death a bit problematic, or his deadness.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so if he breaks or gets shot, he doesn't heal or regenerate. Yet his insides aren't turning into a slurry of goo.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where even like, okay, so he has no breath. How is he able to talk?
2. The whole way you talk is you force air through, your voice box. Your larynx.
Which, if this was main Doctor Who, I could kind of be like, well, that's where logic goes to die. But this is Torchwood, so you would think there would be a bit more.
This is also the show that something like, 8 episodes ago, they had Jack feed his soul to a devil until it exploded, because that's how life works. So, I mean, logic is dead. Or at least metaphysics is not the same there as it is here.
Yeah.
But I don't know how he couldn't be rotting bothered.
I mean, I think they
did kind of hint that well, they specified that, I think, more that it was to prevent rigor mortis, but they did mention like he has to exercise in order to. I think I forget the exact language they used, but
I think
you could kind of extrapolate it to say to keep his organs working, but
I think it was
that might be a stretch.
I think the specific wording was, so long as you stay active, you won't atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
That's muscles.
Yeah.
Doesn't explain why his stomach isn't
Yeah.
turning into a...
Although it might be, we don't know.
Kid be kind of stinky and bloaty. Okay, favorite scene.
I think I will go with... God, it's hard to tell if I should go with the entire bit of this or pick a chunk. But, you know what, I guess I will go with, like, specifically the part of the conversation near the end in the framing device where he makes it clear it's like, you know, hey, jump if you're gonna, but, you know, it's up to you kind of a thing. So this isn't, we're not delving into full-blown PSA territory. Yeah. Like, it doesn't become a fuck you if you do this. It becomes a, I mean, it's your choice, but, you know.
Are you talking about the scene where he kind of drags her to the ledge and makes her look down?
No.
No.
The bit after, I forget if he's shown her the pulse thing yet, but it's generally that he's saying something to the effect of like, you know, if you're gonna do it, it's up to you. I'm not here to stop. I'm not like, it's not that he's making it clear that it's like, if you're gonna do it, I'm not gonna stop you, but also, it's like,
so after the twist.
Yeah, so like sort of the conversation ends up being more of a, the way that I interpret it in my head is more, you know, it turning into a conversation of, well, if you do it, there's no chance of it ever getting any better, sort of a thing, rather than just an it gets better talk, because they have that sort of thing earlier where it's like, I don't know if it gets better or not. So it's like a more nuanced take on this kind of a thing than is usual, which would mainly just be the, no, don't do that, that's a bad thing, you know.
All right, Bill.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with the scene that I thought Alex was saying, but they weren't, which is the scene where Owen is, you know, like he's like, okay, if you're still gonna jump here, you know, come to the edge, look, jump, because I think at that point he kind of knew, like, she's not willing to accept it yet, but she's looking for an excuse not to, and here he's kind of just like, yeah, you're not gonna passively just, you know, fall without actually looking. Here, you know, look and actively make the decision rather than just letting it, you know, be a foregone conclusion. Because I think that was, you know, part of the whole thing of, yes, if you really want to jump, here's your opportunity, but you don't really want to, and this is kind of calling your bluff.
All right.
And also, if she really wanted to, it was grabbing her as if he was going to throw her over himself. So it's like, she wouldn't have been so scared in that moment if she was actually prepared to die, because she would have been like, yeah,
True.
fucking do it.
Kind of shades of Lethal Weapon there, where Martin Riggs does basically the same thing to a somebody who's threatening to jump. And he freaks. And he does jump with him onto a crash pad. Anyway, my favorite scene, I think, actually I had two. One was Owen talking down the security guard as he's going up the stairs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just slowly freaking him out until he can grab the gun. And the other one was when he meets the old guy and he's like, Torchwood, wouldn't they have sent the Japanese girl? She has nice legs. I'm like, horny old goat.
Right.
No, I found both. I found I found the first one to be a moment of cool and the second one to be the moment of funny. Least favorite scene.
God. It's funny because, like, it's a matter of... God, you know what? Basically, for a point that Bill made earlier, I'm probably going to go with... after Owen pulls himself out after trying to drown himself, and Jack being like, oh, okay, it took you like 47 minutes, interesting, sort of a thing, and like being very nonchalant about the whole thing. It's that, like, and again, in a better script, this is where he would have sat down on the dock and they would have had a talk about it. And it's like, hey, you don't think I've tried this? Like, you know, because there are and funny thing is, I'm pretty sure in some other Torchwood episodes, he has talked to other people about the fact that he has tried to off himself multiple times. I think even in Doctor Who, he's had conversations with like the doctor or something about trying to off himself.
Fuck, I don't remember all of the Series 2 episodes that we reviewed years ago, but I have a feeling like there are probably multiple episodes in this very season where he probably tried to kill himself.
Yeah. Or again, it was like the other one, like with Out of Time, where he aids someone in a suicide and basically sort of dies again in that too. So it's like, you know, I feel like there are Torchwood episodes where it comes up, and this is one where I'm like, this would be a perfect excuse to have that conversation where they bond a bit over that. They like allude to it once. And like where, you know, Owen's like, oh, you'll live forever, I'll die forever. Funny how that works. And then walks off. And I'm like, that's all we're gonna get?
That would have been a great chance for Jack to get pissed and be like, you know what this is like?
And then Owen could be like, you know what this is like? Yeah. Okay, whose least favorite was that?
Mine.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm like, I lost track. So I think, and this is kind of an obvious one, but I have one, and there's a caveat to it, and that's going to be the scene where Owen goes off on Tosh, because Tosh just doesn't deserve that shit. Like, you know, it's Owen being Owen. But on the caveat is that if it were anyone other than Owen, it would suck more, because Owen you expect to be an asshole, so it's not as bad. It doesn't hit as hard when Owen's a piece of trash. But if it were anybody else in Torchwood going through this, like if it were Yanto going through this, he probably would have had a similar scene, and it would have hurt a lot more. So it's not as bad as it could have been, but it's just not enjoyable to watch Owen be an asshole.
Right. Especially because it's a lot of vibes of like, just because you're going through something this bad doesn't mean you get to take it out on other people.
Right. And like I said, if it were anyone else, we probably would get scenes of them lashing out too. But Owen has that extra level of assholery. Like, he
Mm.
goes into that whole thing of, like, yes, of how he was aware of Tosh, like, pining over him and, you know, being aware of all these other women he was fucking and everything else. And,
Mm.
you know, that is so much Owen right there.
Yeah.
All right. So my least favorite scene is actually just before the one that I listed as my favorite scene, and that is Owen knocks out the power. He has a minute and a half get in there and get as far as he can, and he spends like 20 seconds fucking around with the heat detector. I'm like, okay, if you weren't under a time constraint, that would be a cool scene. But the fact that you're supposed to, that you're under that gun meant, yeah, you probably shouldn't. All right, final thoughts.
This is one of those ones where I just hate Owen. So I can't get as emotionally invested in this as they want me to. The actor's good, and that's kind of why I hate Owen so much, because the actor's good. And just like a lot of shit that they put on Owen as well. He's more tolerable in this, aside from, you know, the whole woe is me about being undead. Whereas, like, you know, I can appreciate more now than I probably did the first time round. But it's just still like, oh my god, like, not even like get over it, but just like, and this isn't even like as bleak or dark as Torchwood gets, but it's just like, it feels like there would be, and this isn't even the only episode. I'm pretty sure we've already had an episode where, like, yeah, the episode where he initially comes back has elements of that as well. So it's like, you know, I don't know. It's like, did we really need, I guess that's even my point. Do we really need 2 episodes based basically entirely around that? Like, I guess it's nice that this one ends on a more positive note. That is like, he has found a reason to live now. But only to end up getting blown to shit at the at the end anyway. At the end of the series anyway. But you know, it was funny because like when he got shot,
Start liking the character and then, oh no.
Yeah. But you know, I'm one of those people who cheered when he got shot, so you know, it's one of those things that like, you couldn't really endear me to this character, and good lord, you're trying, but it's not working. So that affects my enjoyment of this. While I still think it's a very well done episode to a point, there are bits missing, like we've discussed with the whole Jack's attitude. And there are just other things where I'm like, this is an interesting concept, but I'm not entirely a fan of the execution. And that's about all I've got.
Okay.
All right. Bill?
So yeah, so this episode is interesting when it comes to Owen because it starts with a lot of Owen at his worst, but then there's kind of a bit of Owen at his best at the end of the episode. Although I think next week he goes back to pissing and moaning again. So if I remember right anyway, but we'll find out when we rewatch that. So yeah, it's just Owen. And yeah, it's the multiple episodes around the death and reanimation thing could get annoying, but the fact that it's been, you know, several months since watching the previous one definitely helps that. If we were watching them every week, I'm not sure how I would feel. Um, but otherwise, yeah, this is definitely an episode that starts at the lowest point and then picks up as it goes on. It ends on a high note, and I'm still trying to decide how I rate it. But it's definitely not as bad as I thought it was going to be at the beginning, which is also why I think that more of him pissing and moaning I think might be next week. But yeah, it definitely seems like it goes in a good direction, and that says that can go for a lot with the story. And I don't think I have anything really to add to that, so that's it for me.
All right. So, in my opinion, um, this is once again a well that happened episode. I'd probably be more invested in it if it wasn't Owen centric, just because, yeah, I've we've started our dislike for Owen a long time ago, and it's kind of hard to go back and say, "Hey, he's not a bad guy." No, it's
Some shows manage that, but they spend 4 seasons doing it.
you're like trying to abridge this and can't abridge.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just it's a whole lot of not care. I do feel good that he gets better at the end, but still, just like, well, whatever. And that's really just what I think. It's kind of a ho hum.
Okay, so that brings us to ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Alex.
This is kind of interesting. Because I thought I was going to go slightly higher and be nice, but I'm going to give this a 3.5.
All right.
Okay. I'm thinking for me, I like it too much for a 3.5, but not enough for a 4.5. So that puts it firmly as a 4.
All right. Can you repeat those, please? I was trying to fix. That was a 3.5 from
Yep.
Alex.
Yep.
3.5 and a 4.0.
A 4.0. And I'm actually going to be the negative because I'm going to put a 3 because I'm like, that happened. I barely parsed my interest until the end. And that will even it out to a 3.5 until we hear from Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Which will put this at approximately 301 out of 438 things reviewed. On par with Torchwood Small Worlds. It is better than Torchwood They Keep Killing Susie. And not as good as Torchwood Dead Men Walking or Torchwood Adam. So there you go. 301 out of 438 things viewed. That is all we have to say about Torchwood: A Day in the Death.
All right, so let us know in the comments what you thought of this week's episode if you've watched it. Don't forget to like the video since you've listened this far. Subscribe on YouTube to get our exports every week. Or follow us on Twitch to get notified when we stream.
All right, so next week we will continue with this Torchwood run with Torchwood, Something Borrowed, written by Phil Ford and starring John Barrowman as Captain Jack Harkness, Eve Miles as Gwen Cooper, Vern Gorman as Owen Harper, Naoko Mori as Toshiko Sato, and Gareth David-Lloyd as Ianto Jones. You next.
We finished Sarah Jane, but we haven't finished Phil Ford.